Hey guys, today we're looking at Module 54. Module 54 deals with the production function. Remember yesterday we talked about marginal revenue equaling marginal cost. Well, today we have to start looking at where do those marginal costs come from. In this module, you're going to look at the number of input that we have producing output and how that's related. And then we're also going to look at the diminishing returns to some sort of an input that we're hiring or using for that matter. This little graph here shows us our total production function. If you look at the line, it's total product. And on the left side, we're going to see how much product we can make. On the bottom, we're going to see how many, whatever we're using for input. So if you think about it, probably labor is the easiest thing to think about. So on the bottom, think about hiring that many people. So the first person's going to bring in a little bit of total product, the second person a little bit more. By the third person, we're really cranking up some of the product because the 1, 2, and 3 people are working together to do things like specialize in their tasks. They become much more productive as they are working together. But when you start seeing that 4th person, 5th person, 6th person get hired, eventually what you're going to see is total product will fall simply because they're too many workers, too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will, and they start running over each other, they start getting in each other's way, and they're not being as efficient as they were with having less people work. When you're looking at the inputs and the outputs together, our variable inputs are things that we can increase or decrease pretty easily. A variable input is something like our minimum wage laborer. We can hire a bunch of these people, we can get rid of these people depending on what we need. Our fixed input though, we can't really change, certainly not easily. Fixed input is something like our salaried employee. Or if you're looking at it from a restaurant standpoint, it's the size of our restaurant. Or from a factory standpoint, it's the size of our plant. Variable inputs are easy to change. That fixed input is difficult. When you look at the next two things, talking about short run and long run, in the short run, one thing is fixed. It might be the size of the restaurant, right? You can't change it. You can add more or less workers in there, but you can't change the size of the restaurant that you have. But in the long run, you can change over everything. So in terms of a restaurant, we could knock a wall out, we could add on, we could put on a banquet hall. There's all sorts of things we could do in the long run. So in econ, remember, it's not amount of time, it's how long it takes you to make everything variable. In the short run, one thing's fixed and you can't really change it. In the long run, all inputs are variable inputs. As you look at your total product then, the total product curve, again, just like the graph from 2 slides ago, it's really going to go up at first when workers specialize, but then as those workers get in each other's way, it's going to start seeing total product fall. Like you might know someone at your work who, as soon as they're working, less stuff is going to get done. You might actually be that person. When you show up, you're distracting others, you're making it more difficult for them to do their job, and total product actually goes down. They'd be better off without you working today. As you look at marginal product then, remember, econ's all about the margins, like looking at the one more unit. So in marginal product, the input of that person, like how much are they bringing in terms of output, is going to be super important. So if we look at marginal product of labor, it's our total output divided by adding that one person in, or the change in total output. If we're looking at some sort of like a plant capacity, looking at like a new machine or something like that, that could be considered capital. And we're looking at the change in total output by divided by the change in capital. Like one new machine is going to produce how much more units. And finally, what's going to happen to as we add more things in? What you're going to see is diminishing returns to an input. As you add more people in, you're going to start seeing your overall output decline. If you think about workers at Subway, right? The first person that works, if there's only one worker there, they have to get the bread, then they have to add in the meat, then they have to add in the vegetables, then they have to check you out. It's a slow process. As soon as they add another worker in there, now somebody does the bread and the meat, then they hand it off, the other person does the vegetables and checks you out. Not ideal, but it works, right? You probably get 3 more sandwiches that way. As you add in the third person though, Now you got somebody doing the bread and the meat, someone doing the vegetables, somebody checking you out. That becomes a very efficient process. But as I add in the fourth person or the fifth person or the sixth person, what is it? We can probably try to make up stuff for them to do, but they might actually cause more problems in the limited space that we have inside something like a Subway, and they might actually cause the number of overall sandwiches produced to go down. When you look at the graph then, this is our total product. Like in this case, it looks like I should hire 6 people. But as I'm hiring all the way up to the top, what you're seeing is it's every single person is going to bring in just a little less than the person before. That's our diminishing returns. We'll say a graph like this, it increases, but it's increasing at a diminishing rate, right? Like every single one of those is just a little bit less than the person before. And we can represent that with our marginal product of our labor curve. So what you'll see here, it's the same thing, but this time it's just measuring how much each person brought in. The first person brought in 8, but then the second person actually brought in 10. They're working better together. But then when you see the third person, it's back to 8, then back to 6, then 4, 2, and eventually you should not hire that 7th worker, because you can see right here, between 6 and 7, we actually cross a 0. The 7th person is actually causing us to produce less overall amount. So we don't want to hire that 7th person because we're not getting anything. In fact, we're getting worse by hiring that person. That's what this module is about. All in regards to like diminishing returns and looking at how much labor you should hire. We have do your sapling. Make sure you get that all mission accomplished. And next day we'll do module 55.